Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sticks and Stones Women's Talk Show. We are so excited to be back again today with another episode of our juicy, amazing conversations that we've been having. The mission statement, as we always say in the beginning of our show, is Sticks and Stones exist to rebuild women one word at a time. And that word is the Word of God. And the objective of this show is basically a talk show to provide alternative perspective through media from minority women of space, specifically Black women, Hispanic women, etc. And so today I'm here accompanied by my amazing co-host. Here to my right, I have...
Hi everyone, it's Madeline. It's great to be with you again.
And to my left...
It's Eartha, and I'm happy to be back with everyone again.
Awesome. And so in our series this month, or this season, as we've been talking about holistic women, today's topic is entitled, You Are What You Eat. Now, we're going to start it off a little bit slow, but then we're going to go dig in deeper to what I really want to get into and have a conversation and touch on something that is not really talked about within the Black community. So the first question basically is, the you are what you eat notion is that, you know, basically in order to be fit and healthy, you need to eat good food. So my understanding, or what I want to know from you guys, is basically, what does this saying or expression mean to you, and why do you feel that it is important, or maybe why it's maybe true or non-true? So I'll start with you, Eartha.
Well, before, when I grew up, to me, I thought we ate food because it tastes good. Mm-hmm. And right. That was it. Mm-hmm. But I'm realizing, you know, the older I get and with more maturity, that the food choices we make are important. It's not just about the taste is part of it, right, because, right. You know, the minute you smell something, it's appealing. Yeah. Your mouth starts savoring, you know what I mean? You want to eat it, but that's all part of the way your body's designed. But in addition to that, there's certain fuel your body needs. Mm-hmm. Your food choices is going to play a great role into that. And not only I learned that in the books, you can start feeling it in your body as well. So I think when I think you are what you eat, just from life experiences, I see that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. What about you?
So I think you are what you eat means that there is a direct link between what you eat and how you feel.
Yeah.
When you think about it, a car runs on gasoline, or if you have an electric vehicle, it runs on electricity. Right. You can't put water in it, right? Even though it's another liquid, it's a good liquid, but it's just not gonna function because it wasn't designed for that. Right. And so when we eat good, nutritious food, it actually helps our body function better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one of the important things is the fact that as you get older, you realize how food reacts to your body, how your body breaks down food is completely different as you get older, right? So that's why as we mature and we get older, we're realizing, okay, I can't eat that pound cake, you know, 3 times a week like I used to, because it's gonna show differently, especially us as women, you know, like we don't want certain things to show in certain areas, so on and so forth. So, you know, as we mature, obviously we try to be more selective with what we eat. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to know too is, like, how have you guys applied this saying into your own life, and what challenges have you encountered in the process? Because we all know we've had some challenges with our food, because I know you said about savory, the taste, the smell, the temptations. So Madeline, what would you say, like, how you've applied this, and what are some of the challenges you've experienced?
Well, one of the things that I've tried to do is cut back on processed food, just because I know it's bad for you. I've heard that it makes your body work harder, which isn't good. So, and I also don't really feel great. Yeah. You know, like I spent 2 years not eating McDonald's, and then I had some McDonald's, and it went through my system quick. My body rejected that so fast.
That's good.
So, you know, and your body works with you. So that's just one of the ways. But one of the challenges that I find, just for me personally, is that I live with relatives. And so I'm not the one controlling the grocery shopping or the cooking. So, you know, I can have some level of influence, but generally I eat what's given to me. Yeah. So, you know, thank God my aunt cooks healthy food. But there are certain things where it's like, okay, this food might not be bad in general, but it doesn't go with my system. So then I have to kind of adjust.
Makes sense. What about you, Eartha?
I think this is something ideally everyone would like to apply in their life, but we obviously we know that some more successful than others, right? I've found that, you know, someone in the right state of mind or someone who's not in the right state of mind, they're going through something, usually they don't think about what they eat because their emotions is controlling them. That's something called emotional eating, right? But not knowing that what you eat, and I think you've said in Woodland, affects how you feel as well. And I don't think we think about that. So eating healthy, I think, does require a lot of planning. Right, it's not something that just happened. You have to actually put effort into it, and not just grabbing the closest thing or just because it's fast. We live in a fast-paced world. What's available. So I find that for you to actually properly apply this, these are the things I find that really affects it, and where I see the challenges are. So one, it requires effort. Sometimes we're not willing to put the effort. Right. Sometimes, you know, not sometimes, all the time, for you to be healthy, you have to be intentional about it, right? If you're not going to say, okay, that's why you see, we just had one, New Year's start, people are doing all types of diets, gym memberships are going up, because I'm like, well, maybe what they're doing is that, okay, now I'm going to be intentional about it now. Willpower. You know, we were talking, you know, offline about this, how, oh my God, how some of us like sugars more than others. It's all about willpower. Sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, this is so hard. If you don't have the willpower in the right state of mind, you're going to fail. That's true. Time is important, money, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. Eating healthy is expensive.
Yes, it is.
So, and then the last part, I think it's important, support and encouragement. And that kind of ties with willpower, because sometimes we're not living in a silo in an island by ourselves. We need to support each other. So you'll find that sometimes if you tell somebody, hey, hold me accountable, every time you got to go and reach for that, somebody's going to be like, you said you weren't going to eat that. Then you feel bad and that accountability. So that last part, I think, is important, because we can't do it on our own.
Actually, also in terms of support, I think that's one of the main reasons why, if someone is trying to make changes to their diet, it helps if the people who live with them are also making similar changes, right? So you can't have, you know, one person is like, okay, I'm not eating chips anymore, but the other person's like, well, I don't know about you, and they're stocking up the cabinet. It's like, it's right there. It's a temptation for them. So you really need the people around you to come on board.
And it's just, even when you guys saying that, like, the people around you, sometimes you can influence that person to kind of get on that role too. Like, okay, you eating healthy, that's kind of motivating me to get my eating stuff right. You know what I mean? So one of the things, the points that you made, is how eating healthy is very expensive, and that's kind of like the real thing I wanted to dig into, because I feel like when it comes to talking about being holistic as Black women or Hispanic women, we have to be realistic of what are some of those challenges that we face, because I feel like the first two questions we talked about, it showed how there was a level of control over what we're eating, what we're buying, to make sure that we're eating healthy. But as you guys know, I sent you an article that talked about food deserts. And so I just, you know, kind of want to know, like, prior to this show and prior to me sending the article, were you guys aware of what food deserts were? Had you even heard about it? And basically, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what have you learned from this research that was kind of dug up for this topic? I'll start with you.
So I had heard of food deserts, but I didn't think much about them, just because it didn't affect me personally. Growing up in suburbs, in the city, we kind of always had supermarkets or corner stores nearby. So it wasn't really much of an issue. What I did think was interesting about the article was that it highlighted that access to healthy food isn't just restricted for low-income people, but specifically minority low-income people. It's that much more difficult, you know, if you are a person of color. And I also like some of the suggestions that the author made about, you know, if the doctor tells you you need to eat healthier, recommend, hey, here are places in your area where you might be able to access. If it's not near your home, maybe it's near your job, so that you can go purchase the food that you need if it's not available or if you're not aware exactly where to get it. And then another thing that they mentioned in the article, which I thought was a great idea, was this concept of the mobile food van to bring the food to people if they are not close to a supermarket, and have them pick it up from a local library or community center.
Definitely. Now, I just want to interject really quickly and kind of educate the audience a little bit on what exactly food deserts are and how it's defined. But food deserts really basically are areas in which residents are hard pressed to find affordable, healthy food. And so one of the things that they talked about is they're part of the, there's more landscapes of poor and urban neighborhoods across the United States with fewer supermarkets or farmers markets in the area. So it's easier for those communities to find a Slurpee than it is to find a smoothie, or cheaper to get a Big Mac meal than to grab like dinner at a salad bar or something like a Whole Foods, etc. So just kind of want to put that out there as what exactly food deserts are and how it's defined, so that you can kind of track with us as we're having this conversation as well. So Eartha, just to kind of continue the conversation, what were your thoughts on this as well?
I was joking with the ladies offline. Right. I was saying when I first read, I was saying food dessert. I'm like, I must have been hungry when I read this article. I kept saying food desserts. So then when I was answering the question, even though I was thinking food desserts and preservatives, I found that the way I answered the question, it still applied to the food desert idea. But so keep in mind, when I was answering this, I was thinking food desserts. I said, no, I never have heard the saying before, actually, before you provided the article, but you educated us, right? I was reading it, but I always understood that the foods always had preservatives, right? In terms of, if you're looking at location, because you don't have access to a farmer's market, it's not going to be fresh. So whatever you do get is going to have preservative to preserve it in the middle of the city, you know what I mean? Especially those communities that we're talking about. So, but I thought that the big thing I saw about it was there's the business factor, and I said, follow the money, right? So those things came to mind. I said the food industry also has no accountability, right? When it comes to the health crisis. It's like you have the health crisis, business, and I even feel that even the health industry, it's like they're working together in a way, right? So I said I noticed that. So with that, I thought, well, individuals have to be mindful and proactive in their own food choices, and you can't really depend on what's being given to you. I remember when we started the series, the show, we talked about media. We said, well, media, you can put whatever, you said it, you can put whatever you want to put out there, but I control what comes inside my house. I feel like it's the same thing with these food choices. Well, food desert, food industry, you can put whatever you want out there, but I have to be mindful what I accept and what I allow to go in my body, and not let you control that narrative, right? So I do feel even in the food industry, there's an agenda.
Of course.
There's an agenda. So I said with the minority communities, because they don't have lack access to resources, we always fall prey first.
Yes, we do.
Right? So for example, I explained, I had this conversation with them. I was looking at school lunches, and somebody had an experiment where they took a piece of cheese from the school, and then they said, cheese is supposed to melt, right? He lit up a fire underneath it. That thing stood there. It got dark around it. It never melted. Now, I was so shocked. I said, this is what we're feeding our kids.
My.
I always used to joke about, whenever we used to joke in school saying, I don't want no government cheese. Right. But then I was like, this is not cheese. I was so shocked to see that. So what I always said, well, as parents, I always encourage parents, why don't you box your children's lunch? Then you know what's going in this, into the system. So, but not just the kids, but we all have to be proactive and not just whatever we're being fed is what we're consuming. We have to make specific choices for our own body. So it's so funny how even though I was thinking of dessert, but I was like, I think it still applied. It still applied.
It did. It really did. And you just made a point that's like huge, is the school lunches. You know what I mean? I think it's very unfortunate because one of the things in the article they talked about was the fact that, one, it's hard to be accessed. So if you live in a certain community, you may not have a car, or maybe you have to take public transportation or something like that. who the time we're living in of convenience and you know everything's like basically under a time crunch. How and where and when do you have the time to drive out 30 minutes to go to a supermarket just to get something? You know what I mean? Because whatever the situation is, there's so many different household scenarios. You know, it could be hard for a single mother to provide and go out so far, you know, with 3 kids dragging behind her to go to a supermarket. So I truly believe it is definitely like a secret genocide towards the Black community for sure. Because like you said in your comment earlier that it's majority seen in urban low income, you know, communities. So
I like what she said though about, because you know sometimes doctors, they give you recommendations, you should eat this, but I love what you said. Well, if you think I should eat this, these are the locations you will be able give recommendations so where they can get it as well.
That's a really good point. I think that should be required that they tell, because sometimes it's a matter of knowledge, you just don't know, you know? And it's interesting because, you know, to the point that you made in regards to like preservatives, when you're living in the middle of the city, there's so many products in there just to preserve the meal that by the time you get it, like really how much nutrients is really in there? How much nutrients are you really taking into this? Because then what happens, it affects us mentally, it affects us emotionally, it affects us physically. Basically what you guys said, like what we eat triggers our feeling, how we feel. And that's why there's such a high rate of depression and anxiety and so many different things, because we're vitamin deficient, and vitamin deficiency causes these certain issues as well as diseases, so on and so forth. So, you know, the second article that I had sent, you know, after reading the, you know, the article, it's basically on the urban poverty and nutrition challenges associated with accessibility to a healthy diet, a global systematic literature review. Basically, kind of, were you guys surprised by the information, or did you literally hear this before? Like, we kind of already touched on it, how it's, in a sense, in our communities, there's geographic differences. So you'll find, like, for example, we're in Brockton right now. You won't find a Whole Foods in Brockton. But if you go out to Braintree, you'll probably find it, right? Fall River, or even like Boston, like Mattapan, Rosendale areas, you know, West Roxbury, you won't find a Whole Foods, a Trader Joe's, right? Like in a sense, what we call that is like white stores, you know, white people stores in a sense. And the reason why is because 1, it's expensive. 2, it's not located in our communities. And, you know, like we can't afford that. So I just really want to pick you guys' brain. Like, was this a surprise to you? Is this something that you've noticed being in communities, more urban Black communities? There's more McDonald's on the corner, Burger King, Dunkin' Donuts, all of these fast food processed foods, more than there is places that serve vegetables and healthier meals for our community.
I have noticed it. You'll probably find in the lower income communities, there might be a shopping center and there's 5 fast food joints in that one shopping center. And you can't find a single restaurant where you can actually like walk in and sit down and order a meal and they wait 20 minutes to actually cook it because they're using real food. And I guess I never really thought about why, but it is something that I had noticed at least. You're not gonna find the Whole Foods, obviously, and the Trader Joe's. And sadly, I feel like the real issue is that food is a business, just like healthcare is a business. And they're all in business together. One of the things, and I know like, it is a challenge, it really is, but just one kind of little anecdote is because food is a business, they have to make money. So they will only sell what you're willing to buy. Now, sometimes you might think I can only buy what they sell, but just for me growing up in an immigrant household, my family wasn't big on processed food because they weren't used to that. Right? Like I remember telling my friends one time, if you were having chicken for dinner, that chicken was alive at breakfast time. So we're just like not used to this concept of, you know, stuff being in cans and boxes and sitting on a shelf for months on end. And so because our entire neighborhood was like that, where there were a lot of immigrants who also didn't really eat processed food like that, the corner stores in our area, okay, they didn't have a lot of options, but they did have the plantains. They did have, you know, some of the produce. Maybe it wasn't that fresh. You might question the quality of the food because, you know, I have heard, I don't know if it's true, but I have heard about, you know, food being cheaper because it comes from a farm next to a chemical plant where the soil's contaminated and so on and so forth. So, okay, it's not going to be as good as Whole Foods, but you still can make the choice between the piece of fruit and the bag of chips.
Oh, of course.
And I think that's one area where maybe you can do your part and make the best out of the situation.
Of course.
We really need to re-educate some of the people in our community so that they can associate snacking with eating fruit instead of the chips.
Definitely. Because when you think of snack, that's the first thing you think of.
Exactly.
Cookies, chips, etc.
I thought that was a point you made before I get to my point that was golden. Even though you're being fed it, but if the people are not consuming it, you're still not making business. So, but if you that's the point you're making. If you're in that community, you want the people to buy it, so you kind of have to meet them halfway. So that's why you don't only have chips on the aisle; you have to put some plantains there. You know what I mean? Because that's what they. But I love that. I love that point you made. But similar to modeling, no, I was not surprised at all. I always understood that there was a link, especially, for example, when I'm looking at the children nowadays, I always wonder, like, you kids seem like you're growing a lot faster than what I remember people. It's like the rate is so fast. So I know not only there's a link between obesity, but even in the hormones they're putting in the food. I'm like, you kids, they're like super kids now. I call them the millennials. Like, you guys are not normal. And I feel like there's a link in terms of what we're eating, right? To me, I feel like it's not even just fast food industry, but, you know, just like food in general. So I feel like, for example, I'll give you an example, and you guys brought it up. You ever notice that you can eat something and then you ate something, you go to bed, in the middle of the night, you wake up and you're like, why am I so hungry? And it's your body, you're so hungry. But what I feel is that's because your body, the nutrient that it was expecting to get from the food, it didn't get it. So it just drove up your craving, like, okay, I didn't get any nutrients today. You need to eat something. So you're hungry, like, I'm hungry. It's like, wait, I ate, but you're hungry. Not only you didn't get the nutrients, you got all this other processed stuff that your body's working extra hard to digest that it can't. That's why we're getting so sick faster. We're not getting the nutrients and our body's overworking. So that's why I'm like, oh, no. So I think that link we were drawing between food, health industry, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I can definitely see the link now. But I see it the most in the kids. They're just growing up too fast. Obesity is just out of them. I feel like,
depression,
and we talked about before, willpower. I've noticed, sadly, even when you do have the willpower, you have so much that you're fighting against. Your willpower is like this compared to everything else you're fighting against.
Because it reminds me of what Maudlin said, which is a great point. Like, if you go to a shopping plaza, majority of the stores or restaurants there are processed. Like, you'll go to the Braintree Mall and you see, like, you'll have the Chinese, or maybe like 2 different Chinese restaurants. You'll have the pizza shop, you'll have the subs, you'll have the fried chicken, you know, like all of that in one whole section. But even one of the points that you made that I didn't even think of, because we're talking about grocery markets, is restaurants, right? You brought that out. I'm thinking, how many vegan restaurants are there in Black communities? Or vegetarian restaurants,
Yeah.
plant-based like any of those, like even like a smoothie shop or something like that. It's very rare.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason why I think that's a slick move is because, like you said earlier, Eartha, we're in such a fast-paced time right now, or you know, that's just how our society is. And so a lot of times you don't have time to cook. So even if you did buy some of that healthy stuff, you have it at home, if you're on the go, you're like, okay, I need to stop somewhere real quick and just grab a quickie, you know. But if every corner is Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King, Wendy's, Subway that they say is healthy, you know, like Asian, Chinese restaurant, like, you know, Japanese, like all of this stuff, you're just gonna go with what's quicker because your hunger is like to the peak, right? And you're like, I just need food now in my body right now. And so instead of us getting something, we think filling our stomach is gonna satisfy the craving or the hunger pains, but in reality, the body is looking and seeking for that nutrients. Like what I need is vegetables. I need fruits. I don't need 10 pounds of beef every 2 days, like or all of that stuff.
And because you're not getting the nutrient and the extra preservatives with the sugar, your craving, it's like you have two things working against each other. Your craving is like at an all-time high. So you're just consuming that bad thing even more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
It's like drugs.
Oh my goodness. Didn't we talk about that before we
It's like drugs. You want more. It's like, yeah.
It's crazy.
It's bad.
And so I know that the articles that I sent you guys, they're pretty much like quote unquote outdated. I think one of them was like from 2014 or something like that. So one of the things I was going to ask, like, okay, even if these articles was written few years ago, like, almost 10 plus years, do you feel like the information is still relevant? Do you think that this issue is something that's decreasing? Are they providing more healthy things in our communities, more grocery stores or more healthy restaurants? Or do you feel like it's kind of still the same way it's been, where you find most of these things in, white communities than you do in urban ones? Like, have you seen any changes?
No.
I said, both. Not only the issue is there, but I feel like people I'm calling are becoming more woke.
Yeah.
Because even the health industry, it's becoming a business. It's like I'm feeding you the bad stuff, but I'm also doing a business to show you how do you remedy the bad stuff. Yeah. So there's like business on both ends. Either way you go, we're making money off of you.
It's true. And when you said that, the first thing that popped in my head, because like you said, the whole business is like Burger King with the Impossible Burgers, right? Okay. All of a sudden, a fast food restaurant is selling these like KFC like nuggets, like these, plant-based meats and stuff like that. Right. And like you said, like it's a business.
Of course.
But I really wonder sometimes, like, is it really, it could be having some plant-based, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other things mixed in. I just don't trust it.
Of course.
I do not trust it either, because my thing, I have no problem with vegan food, but if you're gonna go vegan, I feel like you should actually admit that this is a plant and not meat. Right. This whole idea of adding stuff to it to make it look like meat, taste like meat. Oh my gosh. Like, no, if you're eating meat, you're eating meat, real meat. And if you're not eating meat, then don't eat meat. Yeah. Like pick one. Because I don't like this whole concept, and especially when you don't know what they're putting into it to give it that meat-like texture and everything. I'm like, no, just eat your vegetables as vegetables that they're supposed to be.
So I think people are becoming more aware, they're more woke. So I think it's that whole intention again. People are digging for the information. Yeah. So I think now because, and not only they're seeing it, they're feeling it with the mental health crisis. This like, what's going on? It's all being tied. And so they're feeling the detrimental effects. So it's like, okay, I need to do something, right? So I think, I said, so we know the source is big business, but I feel that, the big businesses will find every way to cut corners. Of course. So they will always find it. So I said to do it right actually requires for the business time. It requires money on their end. So why would they want to not make a higher profit? Yeah. Right? So I think the only thing I think a person can do, I said don't depend on the business for your health. The only person who can take a proactive stance on your health is YOU with the capital Y. Yes. You know what I mean?
It's true.
Yeah.
What are some of your closing remarks, Maudlin, on this?
I mean, I don't really think the situation has changed.
Right.
Even if it changes on the surface, at its core, it is still the same problem.
Yeah.
And even if you resolve it in one way, somehow it just pops up its ugly head in another way.
Yeah.
So like you said, at least it would appear that they are working together, right? It's like, I will give you just enough nutrition to keep you alive so that you can still work and produce, but not really be healthy. And when, okay, the food's killing you a little faster than I expected it to, all right then, here's the pills that are gonna help you keep going.
Exactly.
Oh, and by the way, did you go check out that gym? Because exercise is good for you. And I'm like,
money.
exactly. You're paying money for the food, you pay money for
corner.
the pills, you pay money for the exercise machines.
Yeah.
It's a lose
Situation, literally. And I think one thing that you said is true. Like, even though it may change on the surface, I feel like what triggered my thought is just that now you have a system that's kind of turning on its own axle. Like, now you don't need to be pushing anymore. It's running by itself. And so, well, like you said, it's a drug. Once you have some of those things in your system, it's hard to wean off.
Yeah.
And so now, even if you were to provide alternative or what's healthier, the body is now used to that, and that's all that it wants. So it's gonna take a drastic change in order for your system to get off of taking in all of this processed food and so on and so forth that's so bombarded and pushed into our communities, you know? So
can I just say one last thing? This is so related to what we said about media.
Yes.
Because we said, and I think you said, you know, you need to make the change somehow at some point.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. And you said you need to make the change. You said for women in media that it's gonna be hard when you do make the change. It's the same thing here. The first time, if you are eating junk, the first time you start trying to eat healthy, your body's gonna be like,
What is this?
But when you put something bad in your body, your body's like, it has a visceral reaction, like, what did you put in me, you know?
Yeah.
But when you start healthy, it's gonna be so hard, but you're gonna start feeling good and start feeling better. So it's gonna take time to build up that habit.
Yes.
But once you get past that time, then you wanna keep that good habit.
Yeah.
But I think the point you're making is you need to get past that hump first.
Yes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're not gonna feel it immediately, but it takes time.
And then your body won't ever want to
Go back. Exactly.
It's
like my
drugs.
McDonald's situation.
Yes. So the hope is that, you know, hopefully you don't relapse, right?
Yes.
Just like it is when, you know, people are addicted to drugs. It's literally true. And so I definitely wanted to bring out this topic in our Holistic Women series because I feel like it's an important thing that needs to be mentioned. I personally do believe it's another secret genocide of or upon the Black community in regards to the food that we're, you know, intaking. That's affecting us mentally. We have a higher rate of obesity and disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. Those things are usually seen within our community. So I felt like it was very important for us that if we're talking about being holistic in all forms, that we have to realize that our food is important and it's going to affect every area that we're trying to become whole in. And so I hope this is definitely a great start so that you guys can continue doing, or start if you haven't already, doing some research on what it is that you're eating, so on and so forth, and being more mindful of that so that we can definitely change the way that we think and change the way that we live so that we can be whole in every aspect. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We look forward to the next topic so that you guys can join in on the conversation. Our contact information is always at the bottom of the screen as always, and we can't wait to be with you guys again on the next episode. Have a great one, guys.